The winner of the lucky first place opening remarks card was Michael Weber. Michael?
Thank you very much. I'm Michael Weber. One name was left out. You can also call me Mike. This election is very important. It sets the tone for the next 4 years. Experience counts. Life experience and work experience. Education counts. Dedication counts. Responsibility counts. I've worked as a business attorney for over 29 years, bringing parties together so they can both walk away satisfied with the deal they have made. I have served my homeowners association at Andante Emeryville for over 5 years, seeing it through from birth to successful conclusion of construction defect litigation that netted our association approximately $1.8 million. I'm a graduate of Stanford Law School. I have children in both Anna Yates and Emory Secondary, as well as a small one in ECDC. I will dedicate full time to serving you as council member. I will be retiring in February. As an attorney, I am held to the highest ethical standards. I'm committed to living in Emeryville. I own my home. I have owned it since 2005. Your vote is important in this election. I ask you that you choose me as one of your 3 choices. I would be honored to serve you as your council member during the next term. Thank you very much.
What do you hope to accomplish in the next 4 years if you are elected?
I would like to engage in a campaign of reform during the next 4 years. I think that people are more important than edifices. We've asked our police department to give back 17% of their salary and benefits package while turning around and building an Emeryville Center for Community Life that will cost $120 million. I believe that the teachers, the police, are the heart of this city. We have to preserve them. I also believe we need to have much greater transparency and engagement with voters. I have lived here for 6 years, and the only postcard I got from the city was a postcard about opening a park at the end of the street. Thank you.
Emeryville land has been developed largely under a redevelopment agency. Now that Governor Brown has eliminated redevelopment funding, how much will Emeryville's budget suffer? And if you were elected, how would you address this budget gap?
Most of the redevelopment agency money has gone back to developers in the form of subsidies in bidding wars to bring businesses to Emeryville. All cities are now suffering from the same 1/3 reduction in the redevelopment agency funds. So I think we're still on an equal playing field with other cities in terms of attracting development. Now there's one thing that nobody's addressing. We are actually on the wrong side of the redevelopment issue. Redevelopment agencies capture every tax dollar that comes from the redevelopment. None of it can go to the state, none of it can go to the schools. This is something that many people don't understand. Unless the city cedes portions of that money to the state or cedes portions of that money to the schools. So actually, Emeryville, by turning 95% of its land mass into a redevelopment area, has essentially starved the state and starved the schools, and then doled out what it chose to while lavishly rewarding developers with big bribes to come to Emeryville. Not to build family-friendly housing, but to build lofts. Not to build small retail, but to build big boxes. I would like to see that change. I would like us to be a responsible citizen of the state. Thank you.
If we have a natural disaster, like what we saw in Japan, what is your plan of action and in order of importance?
At the company I worked for, we had a disaster recovery plan, which provided for off-site co-location of all data so that you had an emergency headquarters. We need to make sure that Emeryville has that. I assume that it has it because it's a prudent measure. We need to have citywide free internet access so that people can get a hold of each other in the event of an emergency. So far, the internet has proven to be much more robust than even cell phones, so we can't rely just on cell phones. We need to push small tablets and inexpensive one PC for everybody type of devices out to families that cannot afford them. Most importantly, we need to get the word out to everyday residents to store a lot of water in their homes, to have food available, to have sanitary supplies available. And that's part of education. And Ken has proposed that we have an annual town hall meeting. I back that up because we need to talk to you guys more. Here we are so many years later, and a lot of us still don't know quite what's going on in this city. Thank you.
Why do you support or oppose the Emeryville Center for Community Life?
I oppose the Center for Community Life because I think that it's bad to put all of our eggs in one basket. I think that certain things can be co-located, like a public library and perhaps community meeting rooms. But I do not like the idea of co-locating my little children and other parents' little children with the high school students. When I read Hyeon Kim's oral report on this from last June, she said that only rural areas in America have a one-room red schoolhouse type of approach to education. Now, we are, as a city, are providing support for the Emeryville Center for Community Life. We're putting our money in there, so we should have a say as to what goes on there. Now, it was going to include the AC Transit yard across the street, but it can no longer do that. So we're trying to cram way too much on one small site. I object to it primarily for that reason. Thank you very much.
Has Emeryville met its quota for providing housing to all income levels?
As a person with 3 children and a wife living in a 2-bedroom unit, I have to say I have a personal investment in this issue. I'd like to ask, over the last 24 years, over the last 12 years, what fools decided to build this community into a yuppie loft center, a yuppie loft magnet for commuters? Nobody seemed to care about building families. When I've gone out and walked the precincts, I've met lots of old stock families. There are a lot of old people in Emeryville, and they settled down and they had families and they grew up and they grew old. And there is no room for that for young families. We will struggle with the European model. We will live in our condo. I am committed to Emeryville. I will tough it out. I bought my condo. I want to stay here. But what did we do for family-friendly housing? In the future, let's build some. Let's not just talk about it. Thank you.
What will be your one biggest accomplishment in the next 4 years?
My biggest accomplishment will be reclaiming city government in Emeryville from the established power structure for you, the residents and voters. Policy is being made by city staff, not by your city council. The city council is making it without asking you what you care about things. 4 years ago, we had a very active resident community here that would pack this city hall and demand that they be heard. And now we have issues with toxic dust coming from the Sherwin-Williams site, and they want to vote to let them do more of the toxic excavation, even on the weekend when the kids are going to be around. So I think what we have here is a failure to communicate. And if you put me on the city council, I will have access to all the information. I will publish it on my blog. I will publish it on my website. And it's up to you to call me, to get involved, and to reclaim Emeryville. I think occupying Emeryville, in a certain sense, might not be such a bad idea. Thank you very much.
Emeryville's population grew by significant leaps between 2000 and 2009, possibly as much as 40%. What is the right approach today for addressing reduced revenues with growing demand for services?
I think what we have to keep in mind is that most of the businesses, and I'm talking big businesses and big landowners in Emeryville, are getting a free pass because of the collapse of the housing market. Their commercial property values have plummeted. They have all asked for reassessment. They're all paying lower tax. They're not making their fair share contribution to Emeryville anymore. I don't want to gouge business. I worked for businesses for years. I support business in Emeryville. But they must pay their fair share by taking off the cap on the business license and instituting a payroll tax if we need to. Now, I think we should have a sunset clause on those taxes. When we get property values back, we need to give those businesses a break. But in the short term, we need to find a way to get more money from them. Now, one thing I really object to is inviting Lawrence Berkeley Labs to move into Emeryville because they are tax exempt, and who wanted to do that? It's a bad idea. We need to get the businesses in here that will pay taxes, not the businesses that will ask their landlords to file for another property tax assessment reduction. So let's be smart on this. Thank you.
What is your experience in money management, budgeting for cities?
First of all, I don't want to be an expert on everything. I'll tell you that this is where you go to your city manager because he should have all the numbers for you. But I will say this. I worked 29 years as a commercial real estate lawyer doing purchase and sale transactions, leases of all kinds, large office leases, triple net leases, big box leases. And I always had to look at the budget because I had to know the parameters within which we could make concessions on the rent or within which we could get extra recoveries from the tenant. So numbers have been as much a part of my life as words. I'm not quite as good at numbers as I am at words, but I will learn and I will talk to the city manager and learn everything I need to do a great job for you guys. Thank you.
Do you think a candidate's age or health is under any circumstances a legitimate concern for voters? And when is it okay to ask?
I think age should never be an issue. I'm 62, and I will tell you that as you get old in the legal profession, you face increasing amounts of discrimination. We don't want that. But I do think health is very much an issue, and I lost my mother 2 years ago when she was 83 years old to respiratory failure. She was hale and hearty, and then she went in the hospital with pneumonia. She didn't have the fighting spirit that some people have, and she succumbed. So I think the ability to serve out a term without having to retire, to serve out a term without leaving the city council to nominate a replacement on its own is really an important issue. It's one of the things we don't want to talk about because it's politically incorrect, but I think it's a factor, not a big factor, but a factor. Thank you. I think an election should be campaigned based on issues, and I think until a candidate has elucidated issues, they shouldn't be getting recommendations. This is not a popularity contest, so I want to use my time to talk about some issues. Emeryville Center of Community Life was sold to the voters as a seismic safety issue. That's the reason it passed, not because people believe in co-location or believe in edifices to politicians' ego. So please keep that in mind. I would also like to talk about co-location. Every time I go to a meeting, I'm told that co-location was decided last year. When I look at the transcripts, co-location was supposed to be discussed this year as part of the programming discussion. In terms of saving money, I would like to revisit this for a second because although we have a city attorney located here and although all the staff sits in one small building, we had to pay out $3.6 million to a wrongfully discharged employee who had previously won grievances against the city. So that was an incredible case of mismanagement. I'm not addressing whether she should be kept or let go, but it should have been done the right way, and it wasn't. Also, I would like to oh yeah, well, the $65 million bond fiasco, you just need to study that. Thank you very much.